Good day, ma'am. I am Jane Banyo and this is my oral recitation. Okay. Justifying circumstances. And circumstances do not incur any criminal liability. Article 11. Justifying circumstances, the following do not incur any criminal liability. Number, number 1. Anyone who acts in the defense of his person or rights provided that the following circumstances concur. First, unlawful aggression. Second, reasonable necessity of the means employed to prevent or repel it. Third is lack of sufficient provocation on the part of the person defending himself. Second is anyone who acts in defense of the person or right of his spouse, ascendants, descendants, or legitimate, natural, or adoptive brothers or sisters, or of his relative by affinity in the same degrees, and those by consagin consanguinity consanguinity within the fourth civil degree, provided that the first and second requisite prescribed in the next preceding circumstances are present, and the further requisite in case in the provocation was given by the person attacked that one making defense had no part therein. Third is anyone who act in defense of the person or rights of a stranger, provided that the first and second requisite mentioned in the first circumstances of his article are present, and that the person defending he got induced by revenge or resentment or other evil motive. 4. Any person who, in order to avoid as evil or injury, does as act which causes damage to another, provided that the following requisites are present. First, that evils sought to be avoided actually exist. Second, that the injury feared he greater than to avoid it. Third, that there be no other practical and less harmful means of preventing it. 5. Any person who act in the fulfillment of a duty or in the lawful exercise of a right or office. 6. Any person who act in obedience to an order issued by a superior for some lawful purpose. Article 12. Circumstances which exempt from criminal liability. The following are exempt from criminal liability. First, an imbecile or an insane person, unless the latter has act during a lucid interval. Lucid? Dayon, second, a person under 9 years of age. Dayon, 4, any person who, while performing a lawful act which due care reasons as injury by means accident without fault or intention of causing it. 5. Any person who acts under the compulsion of an irresistible force. 6. Any persons who act under the impulse of as uncontrollable fear of a equal or greater injury. 7. Any person who feels any person who fails to perform as an act required by law when prevented by some lawful mm, or insupportable cause. Chapter 3. Circumstances which mitigating criminal liability. Article 13. Mitigating circumstances. The following are mitigating circumstances. Those mentioned in a preceding chapter, when all the requisite necessary to justify the act or the exempt from the criminal liability in the perspective causes are not attendant. 2 is that the offender is under 18 years old of age or over 70 years. In the case of the minor, he shall be proceeded against in accordance with the provision of Article 80. Number 3, that the offender had no intention to commit so grave a wrong as that committed. 4 is that sufficient provocation or threat on the part of the offended party immediately preceded the act. That the act was committed in the immediate vindication of a grave offense to the one committing the felony, or his spouse, ascending descendants, legitimate, natural, or adopted brothers and sisters, or relatives by affinity within the same degrees. 6. That of having act upon an impulse as so powerful as naturally to brave, produce passion or obfuscation. 7. That the offender had voluntarily surrendered himself to a person in authority or big agent, or that he had voluntarily confessed his guilt before the court prior to the presentation of the evidence of the prosecution. 8. That the offender is deaf and dumb, blind, or otherwise suffering some physical defect which thus restrict his means of actions or defense or communications with his fellow beings. 8. Such illness of the offender as will diminish the exercise of the willpower of the offender without whoever depriving him of consciousness of his act. 10. And finally, any other circumstances of a similar nature and analog to those above mentioned. Chapter 4. Circumstances which aggravate circumstances liability. Article 14. Aggravating circumstances. The following are aggravating circumstances. That first is that advantage be taken by the offender of his public position. That the crime be committed in contempt of or with insult to the public authorities. Third, that the act be committed with insult or in disregards of the respect due to the offended party on account of his rank, age, or sex, or that it be committed in the dwelling of the offended party. If the latter has not given provocation. 4. That the act he committed with abuse of confidence or abuse ungratefulness. 5. That the crime be committed in the place of the chief executive or in his presence or where public authorities are engaged in the discharge of their duties or in a place dedication to religious worship. 6 is that the crime be committed in the night time or in an uninhabited place or by a band or whenever such circumstances may facilitate the commission of the offense. Whenever more than 3 around malefactors shall have act together to the commission of an offense and shall be dismissed. It shall be deemed to have been committed by a band. 7. That the crime be committed on the occasion of a inflagration, shipwreck, or earthquake, or other calamity or misfortune. 8. That the crime be committed with the aid of armed men or person who ensure or affect impunity. 9. That the accused is recidivist. 10. That the offender has been the crime. Number 10. That the offender has been previously punished for an offense for which the law attached the equal or greater penalty, or for 2 or more crimes to which is attached a lighter penalty. 11. The crime be committed in consideration of a prize or reward or promise. Mm, 12. that the crime be committed by means of in addition or fire or poisons or explosion or standing of a vis or intentional damage thereto, derangement of a locomotive or by the use of any person or any other person artifice involving great waste and rule. 13. That the act be committed with evident premeditations. 14. That craft or fraud or disguise he employed. 15. That advantage be taken of superior strength or means be employed in weaken the defense. 16. That the act he committed with treachery Hindi na discuss. 16. That the act he committed were with treachery. 17. That means he employed or circumstances brought about which add ignominy to the natural effect of the act. 18. That the crime he committed after an unlawful entry. 19. That as a means to the commission of a crime, a wall, or roof, floor, door, or a window be broken. 20. That the crime be committed with the aid of persons under 15 years of age or by means of motor vehicles, airships, or other similar means. 21. That the wrong done is the commissions of the crime be deliberately augmented by causing other wrong not necessary for its commission. Chapter 5 or Alternative Circumstances. Article 15. Their concept. Alternative circumstances are those which must be taken into consideration as aggravating or mitigating according to the nature and effect and of the crime and the other conditions attending its commission. They are relationship, intoxication, and the degree of instructions and educations of the offender. The alternative circumstances of relationship shall be taken into consideration when the offended party is the spouse, ascendants, descendants, legitimate, natural, or adopted brothers or sisters, or relative by affinity in the same degree of the offender. The intoxications of the offender shall be taken into the consideration as mitigating circumstances when the offender have committed a felony in a state of intoxication, if the same is not habitual or subsequent to the plan to commit the said felony. But when the intoxication is habitual or intentional is that be considered as an aggravating circumstances. Thank you, ma'am, and God bless.